It was an ordinary workday for Claire, an experienced nurse who had spent many years helping others. The night brought with it silence and calm, but as it turned out, this very night would change her life forever. Outside the walls of the hospital, she knew like the back of her hand, the usual hustle and bustle prevailed. But that night, nothing went as planned. Claire, feeling a slight malaise, attributed it to fatigue and the stress of endless shifts. However, her condition soon deteriorated sharply, and before she could grasp what was happening, she found herself on the operating table. Doctors fought for her life, and she, half conscious, felt something strange and inexplicable. At some point, everything around her began to fade. The light in the room gradually dimmed until Claire was enveloped in complete darkness. She was surrounded by cold and silence, but somewhere in the distance, a faint glimmer began to appear. This was the beginning of her incredible journey, a journey she could never have imagined possible. Thoughts raced through her mind as she tried to understand what was happening. But at that very moment, just as she was about to panic, something inside her told her not to be afraid and to keep moving forward. It was like an intuitive understanding that she needed to trust the unknown and follow the light. Her journey through this mysterious darkness was only just beginning, and Claire could not have imagined the discoveries and shocking moments that awaited her ahead. But at that moment, her heart beat in time with the flickering light, calling her into the unknown distance. The darkness that engulfed Claire was like a thick veil, but deep within it, a barely perceptible glimmer began to break through. Suddenly, she felt the space around her begin to change, as if she were moving through an invisible tunnel. Every movement she made was accompanied by strange sensations, as if she were stepping from one dimension into another. The light ahead grew brighter and brighter, and soon she realized she was standing on the threshold of an entirely new world. This world was unlike anything she had ever known. All around her stretched an endless plain, bathed in a soft, warm light. The air was filled with subtle shades of scents she couldn't describe, yet they felt familiar and soothing. She felt that this world was alive and breathing, welcoming her like an old friend returning home after a long journey. Everything around her was so real that her senses became heightened to the limit, allowing her to perceive even the smallest details. Soon she was surrounded by images, vague yet still visible. They were human figures, their outlines seeming ethereal. Each of these figures carried a sense of peace, yet at the same time filled her mind with questions. Who were they? Why were they here? But to Claire's surprise, she wasn't afraid. She intuitively understood that they were part of something greater, something she was yet to discover. A moving figure caught her attention. It was a woman, whose face seemed painfully familiar to Claire. The woman smiled, her eyes radiating warmth, and Claire felt the weight of the questions that had tormented her sink deep into this strange world. She couldn't explain who this woman was, but the sense of kinship was overwhelming. With every step, Claire became more convinced that this world was full of answers and hidden meanings. Ahead of her lay mysteries she could never have dreamed of unraveling. But she knew one thing: she had to continue her journey forward, toward the light that beckoned and promised new understanding and new encounters. Claire could not go back. The unknown awaited her ahead, and every step brought new sensations. The space around her was filled with an indescribable light that did not blind, but instead enveloped her with warmth and tranquility. She felt her body and mind becoming lighter, as if she were floating above the ground, freed from the shackles of familiar reality. Here, time had no meaning. Everything merged into a single stream that engulfed her completely. Suddenly, Claire saw something strange on the horizon. They were mysterious structures, as if from another world. They resembled buildings, but not made of brick or glass. Their walls glowed, shimmering with all the colors of the rainbow. Intricate patterns on their surfaces seemed alive, slowly shifting and flowing into one another. These architectural creations were like pulsating organic structures, each one breathing and living its own life. All the more clearly, she could hear a soft melodic hum that filled her soul with peace and confidence. There was a special harmony in this sound, one she had never experienced in her ordinary life. It was part of this world, part of her new existence. Standing at the very doors of one of these structures, Claire felt herself enveloped by an incredible sense of acceptance and understanding. She knew that here she would find answers to her questions. As she opened the door, she felt that this was only the beginning of her remarkable journey. Step by step, this world unfolded before her, and every moment promised even more discoveries and revelations. But what surprised her most was that this strange world felt painfully familiar, as if she had been here before. Immersed in this mysterious world, Claire soon noticed new figures beginning to appear around her. They were not just images. These were people she had once known. The first person she recognized was her grandfather, who had passed away when she was only 10 years old. He stood in the distance, waving at her and smiling his kind, familiar smile as if to say that everything would be all right. Claire was in shock. How could she meet someone from her past in this place? Then her old friends appeared, the ones she had long lost touch with. They were as young as she remembered them. And even though they didn't say a word, Claire felt an invisible bond forming between them, as if they understood each other without speaking. Moving on, Claire noticed a little girl running around. This girl looked just like Claire did as a child, but she was surrounded by people Claire couldn't remember. Their faces were blurred, but there was something unbreakable and warm in their presence. The little girl laughed and called for her to come play. It was a strange reminder of her own childhood dreams, where she often saw herself in just as magical a place. But the most unexpected encounter was the appearance of her future. Claire saw herself as an older, wise woman, surrounded by family. Their faces were new, yet at the same time felt completely natural and familiar. In this vision, she saw the life she could have had if she had made different choices and taken another path. These encounters overwhelmed her. They were obvious, yet at the same time unimaginable. Claire realized that through these encounters, she was not only exploring a parallel world, but also beginning to understand herself more deeply, her choices and their consequences. It was clear this experience would change her outlook on life forever. Gradually, the world around Claire began to dissolve, as if it were itself an illusion created by the mind. The walls of the gleaming buildings began to melt, flowing into a soft mist that surrounded her on all sides. Claire felt the boundaries between worlds becoming elusive. She stood on the threshold where reality was no longer distinct and illusion seemed astonishingly real. Her mind was bewildered by this sensation, as if everything around her was trying to show that reality was just one of many dimensions of possibility. Claire suddenly remembered stories about people who claimed to have experienced similar moments on the border between life and death. But it's one thing to hear or read about such stories, and quite another to experience it yourself. She realized that this boundary was nothing more than a doorway to other, perhaps deeper levels of understanding. The question of what is real lost its significance in light of the new sensations and experiences that engulfed her. Being between worlds opened up a new perception for her. Suddenly, she felt a wave of emotions and memories crash over her. Everything she had ever experienced flashed before her eyes like a film reel, moving her from one moment to the next. In each of these moments, she felt life in all its fullness, joys, sorrows, fears, and hopes. The boundary between worlds now seemed to her not as an obstacle, but as an opportunity to review her life and reassess its meaning. Immersed in this whirlwind of memories, Claire realized that her strength lay in her ability to accept and appreciate everything that made her life unique. She discovered that reality is not only what can be touched or seen, but also what remains imprinted in memory and emotion. In this new understanding, she found the confidence that her return to our world would be the beginning of a new, more mindful life. As reality slowly began to return, Claire felt her body gradually fill with a heaviness she had almost forgotten during her journey. The sensation of lightness and floating gave way to the familiar pull of earthly gravity, and the light that had surrounded her began to fade, dissolving into the familiar outlines of the hospital room. The return did not happen abruptly, but as if someone was slowly lifting an invisible veil, revealing the familiar world. The sounds of the surrounding world returned gradually. The quiet rustle of medical equipment and the muffled voices of doctors blended into a single hum. She felt a hand touch hers, and the faint voice of someone from the medical staff reached her from somewhere far away, as if through a cottony veil. All of it felt both familiar and foreign at the same time, as if she had returned from a long journey in an adventure to which someone invisible had invited her. Coming back to this reality did not leave her untouched. Claire tried to reconcile within herself the two worlds she had just experienced. Her mind was filled with clarity and an awareness of something new, while every cell in her body trembled with the impressions she had experienced there, beyond the boundary. Soon she recognized the familiar faces of her colleagues surrounding her in the ward. Their eyes shone with joy and relief. This experience left an indelible mark on her soul. She knew she was here and now, but everything she had seen and felt would stay with her forever. Her outlook on life had changed. It became clear that the boundaries of what is possible could be much wider than she had imagined. Returning to her ordinary life, Claire realized that what was left beyond the border of the unknown world had become a part of her. And it is precisely this realization that gives her the strength to move forward, accepting reality in all its forms. Back in reality, Claire felt that she could no longer look at life the way she used to. Everything that once seemed important and significant now appeared to her in a different light. She realized that every moment of life is unique and precious. And this simple truth changed her perception. She became more attentive to the little things that had previously seemed insignificant to her. Claire realized that her experience was not just a coincidence but a discovery of the unknown, which gave her the opportunity to learn to see the world differently. She began to notice details that had previously escaped her attention: the smiles on the faces of passers-by, the rustling of leaves underfoot, the quiet moments of solitude. These details became an anchor for her in our world, reminding her of the fragility and beauty of life. Trying to incorporate this new understanding into her everyday life, Claire began to devote more time to herself and her loved ones. She learned to listen and truly hear, to be present and supportive. This experience changed not only her inner world, but also her relationships with those around her. Colleagues and friends noted that she had become more open and attentive, and this did not go unnoticed. For Claire, this new outlook on life became a source of inspiration and strength. She was no longer afraid of the unknown, because she knew that it was there the answers to many of her questions were hidden. This experience taught her to accept the world in all its fullness and diversity, to live each day consciously. She let go of the fears that had held her captive and looked to the future with confidence. But most importantly, she realized that reality and illusion can be inextricably linked, and that on the border between these worlds lies a place where one can find true understanding of oneself. Claire returned to reality, but images and memories from that amazing world still flickered before her eyes. She felt that her perspectives and sensations had changed forever. Her mind was filled with questions. Was it an illusion or reality? But instead of tormenting herself with doubts, Claire decided to accept what she had experienced as a part of her life. She realized that the essence of reality goes beyond what we know and see. This experience reminded her of the importance of every moment and the uniqueness of life. Back on her hospital bed, surrounded by familiar faces, Claire thought about how her unusual encounters had left an indelible mark on her memory. She remembered talking with loved ones who had long since passed away and seeing alternative versions of her own life. These moments made her realize that reality is not always what it seems at first glance, and that forces beyond our understanding can influence us. Now that she had returned to her ordinary life, Claire became more attentive to the details around her and tried to appreciate them. She learned to notice the goodness in people and the beauty in simple things that had previously gone unnoticed. Everyday worries no longer seemed so serious to her, since she knew how much more unknown and amazing there was beyond the limits of our perception. Claire shared her experiences with her colleagues, who noticed how her energy and attitude toward work had changed. She became more engaged and responsive, and this did not go unnoticed. Her experience helped her find common ground with patients and doctors, empathizing with their struggles on a deeper level. These changes did not come without a cost. Claire realized that her experience on the border between worlds was not an end, but merely the beginning of a new stage in her life. She was grateful for this and for the opportunity to see the world from a new perspective. This experience opened doors for her to a new understanding, where reality and illusion could coexist, allowing her to find her own truth within them.